The clatter of silverware and the low hum of conversations were the soundtrack of Juliet's exhaustion. Each plate she carried felt heavier than the last, a weight not just of food, but of endless days and sleepless nights. Her feet ached in her worn-out shoes, and the cheerful smile she plastered on her face was a fragile mask hiding a deep, secret sadness. She was a ghost in her own life, moving through the opulent restaurant, invisible to the laughing couples and important business people who barely glanced at the lady refilling their water glasses. All that kept her going was a single thought, a tiny beacon of light in the gloom waiting for her at home. Across the room, in a secluded, velvet-lined booth, a man watched the world with a different kind of weight. Raymond was a king in his domain. A single glance from his sharp, dark green eyes could make a grown man nervous. He was respected, feared, and wealthy beyond most people's dreams. Yet, as he listened to his associates talk business, the sounds were just empty noise. His personal life was a hollow, silent space. He trusted no one, and in return he received only obedience, never warmth. He felt a familiar, cold boredom settle over him, the kind that all his power and money could never chase away. The universe, however, was about to spin their worlds into a violent collision. Juliet's vision swam as she lifted a heavy tray of dirty dishes. Spots of light danced before her eyes. She had skipped lunch, again, to save a few dollars for the mountain of bills waiting for her. A wave of dizziness washed over her so strongly she had to stop, leaning against a cool wall for support. Just get through the shift, she chanted in her head, just a few more hours. She took a deep, shaky breath and pushed off the wall, her mission clear: get to table 9, clear the plates, and don't drop anything. Her path took her directly past the powerful man's booth. Raymond was mid-sentence, his voice a low, authoritative rumble, when a flicker of movement caught his eye. It was the waitress, the one with the tired eyes that didn't match her young face. He'd noticed her earlier, a silent observation in his constant assessment of his surroundings. He saw the pallor of her skin, the slight tremble in her hands as she balanced her tray. He watched, almost detached, as she took another step, and then her knees simply gave way. It wasn't a slow, dramatic swoon. It was a sudden, shocking collapse. Time seemed to slow. One moment she was upright, a portrait of desperate endurance. The next, she was falling, the heavy tray of clattering porcelain crashing to the floor in a deafening symphony of shattering ceramic. But she never hit the hard, tiled floor. In a move that shocked everyone at his table, and himself most of all, Raymond was out of his seat in a blur of controlled motion. His chair scraped back loudly as he surged forward, his powerful arms catching her just before impact. She was startlingly light in his arms, a bundle of delicate bones and worn-out fabric. A faint, clean scent of soap and exhaustion clung to her, a stark contrast to the rich perfumes and expensive colognes that usually filled his world. Her head lolled back against his shoulder, her face pale and utterly vulnerable. A strange, unfamiliar feeling jolted through him, a fierce, protective instinct he hadn't felt in years. It was raw and immediate, overriding all his usual cold calculation. "Call a doctor. Now," he commanded, his voice cutting through the stunned silence of the restaurant. His men scrambled to obey. He adjusted his hold on her, intending to carry her to a more private area. As he did, his movement jostled her slightly, and something fluttered from the pocket of her simple black apron. It was a small, square of paper, worn soft at the edges from countless touches. It pirouetted in the air for a heart-stopping second before landing face up on the floor. Raymond's eyes, sharp and missing nothing, dropped to it. It was a photograph. The world, the broken plates, the gasping patrons, the worried voices of his men, everything faded into a dull, distant roar. All his focus, his entire being, zeroed in on that tiny square of paper. It was a picture of a baby boy. He had a tuft of dark hair and chubby, smiling cheeks. The baby was laughing, his eyes crinkled with joy. But it was the eyes themselves that stopped Raymond's heart. They were a unique, dark shade of green. A specific shade of green he saw every morning in his own mirror. A shade of green that ran like a secret thread through his family's history, a trait passed down from his own father and his grandfather before him. His breath caught in his throat, a sharp, painful hitch. The air felt thick, impossible to draw into his lungs. The noisy restaurant seemed to shrink, the walls closing in until it was just him, the unconscious woman in his arms, and the photograph that threatened to shatter the very foundations of his empty, guarded life. The single, silent word screamed in his mind. Who is this child? His gaze snapped from the photo to the pale, unconscious face of the waitress. Who is she? This wasn't a random stranger. This was a woman connected to him by a thread he couldn't yet see, a thread tied to a child with his eyes. The secret sadness he had seen in her now felt like a living, breathing thing, and he was suddenly, desperately certain that he was at the very center of it. The protective instinct that had first surged through him now twisted into something darker, more intense, and wildly possessive. This woman, this child, they were his. A mystery had fallen right into his arms, and he would not let go until he had every single answer. He knelt, still cradling her carefully against his chest with one arm, and with his other hand he reached down. His fingers, usually so steady and sure, trembled slightly as he picked up the worn photograph. The baby's dark green eyes seemed to stare right back at him, full of unspoken questions. He looked from the picture to the woman, his mind racing, piecing together a puzzle with pieces he never knew were missing. The cliffhanger was absolute, a silent scream in the opulent room. The powerful, untouchable Raymond was holding a mystery in his arms, and the truth, he knew, would change everything forever. The world returned to Juliet in a slow, disorienting wave. The first thing she was aware of was the feeling of incredible softness beneath her. It wasn't the scratchy, thin mattress of her own bed, but something plush and enveloping. The air smelled different too, not of stale coffee and disinfectant, but of leather and clean, masculine spice. Her eyelids fluttered open, and she found herself staring at a high, ornate ceiling. Panic, cold and immediate, shot through her. This was not the restaurant's break room. She tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced her back down against the pillows of a deep, dark sofa. She was in a large, luxurious office, all dark wood and quiet power. And she was not alone. Across the room, standing by a vast window that looked out over the glittering city, was the man. The one from the restaurant. The one whose eyes had held a silent storm. He turned, and the full force of his attention landed on her. In the intimate quiet of the room, he seemed even larger, more formidable. This was Raymond. "You fainted," he said, his voice a low rumble that filled the space between them. He didn't move closer, but his presence seemed to shrink the room. He held up a small, familiar piece of paper between his fingers. "This fell from your pocket." Juliet's heart plummeted. Her secret, her most precious, guarded secret, was in the hands of this terrifying, powerful stranger. All the color drained from her face once more. "Who is he?" Raymond's question was not a request. It was a command, sharp and expectant. Tears welled in Juliet's eyes, a hot, unstoppable flood. The fear, the exhaustion, the years of carrying this burden alone, it all crashed down on her at that moment. The dam broke. A sob ripped from her throat, and the words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. "His name is Alex," she whispered, her voice trembling. He's our son." The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. Raymond's face, usually a mask of cool control, went utterly still. The air crackled. He took a single, slow step toward her. "Our son," he repeated, the words foreign and impossible on his tongue. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "That night, the summer festival years ago. You bought me a lemon ice. We talked for hours. You were different then. Softer." She saw a flicker of recognition in his mesmerizing green eyes, a crack in his icy exterior. "You told me your world was complicated. I didn't understand. Not until the next morning, when I saw the men waiting for you, saw the way they looked at you, with fear. I was scared. I left before you woke. I found out I was pregnant, and I was so afraid to tell you. I thought you'd be angry. I thought you might take him from me, or drag him into your dangerous life." Each word was a confession, a piece of a story he never knew existed. With every sentence, Raymond's world tilted further off its axis. The memory of that one perfect night, a fleeting escape he had almost forgotten, rushed back. The girl with the warm smile and eyes that saw the man, not the power. He had been different then, before the weight of his responsibilities had hardened him completely. And she had vanished, leaving behind a ghost of a memory. Now, that ghost was here, telling him he had a son. A boy. With his eyes. A torrent of emotions warred within him. White-hot anger that she had kept this from him, that she had struggled alone. A staggering, profound confusion as his entire sense of self was rewritten in an instant. He was a father. But cutting through the anger and confusion, sharper and more powerful than both, was a primal, protective instinct so fierce it stole his breath. His son. His blood. Where is he? Raymond's voice was rough, strained with the effort of controlling the storm inside him. With my neighbor. He's safe. He's always safe, Juliet said, her voice pleading as if reading his deepest fear. I work, all of this, it's all for him. For his medicine, for his clothes, for a chance at a better life. The image of her collapsing, of the worn photo, of her working herself to exhaustion, it all clicked into a devastating picture. She had been carrying the weight of his child, their child, on her slender shoulders, while he lived in this palace of solitude. The anger he felt began to melt, replaced by a crushing sense of guilt and a resolve as hard as steel. He closed the distance between them in 2 long strides, no longer a distant king but a man consumed. He loomed over her, his gaze intense, searching her face for the girl he remembered. Listen to me, he said, his voice dropping to a husky, intimate whisper that vibrated through her. That ends now. All of it. You will never struggle again. You will never work another day in that place. He's my son. My blood. And you are his mother. He reached out, his hand, surprisingly gentle, cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear. The touch sent an electric jolt through both of them. You both belong with me. The declaration hung in the air, a forbidden promise. It was a claim not just on the child but on her. In the quiet intensity of his gaze, the years of separation seemed to collapse. The memory of that single, romantic night pulsed between them, a live wire of forgotten connection. The air grew thick, charged with a heat that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. Juliet looked up at him, her fear slowly being replaced by a different, more dangerous emotion. She saw not just the powerful, feared man, but the man from the festival, the one who had looked at her as if she were the only person in the world. The spark, long buried under years of hardship and loneliness, flickered back to life. Raymond saw the change in her eyes, the surrender, the rekindled flame. It was his undoing. With a low, guttural sound, he bent his head. He didn't ask. He took. His lips captured hers in a kiss that was nothing like their first, gentle one years ago. This was a kiss of possession, of desperation, of years of pent-up longing and what's. It was heated and passionate, a claiming and a promise all at once. It was a storm of emotion, anger, forgiveness, desire, and a terrifying, overwhelming need. Juliet melted into it, her hands coming up to clutch the front of his expensive shirt, not to push him away, but to anchor herself in the whirlwind he had unleashed. It was a kiss that sealed their fate, a fiery bridge from a forgotten past to a future they would now have to face together. The drive to Raymond's home was a silent, surreal journey. The car, impossibly quiet and smooth, glided through the city, carrying Juliet away from the life she had known. She stared out the window, not at the passing lights, but at the reflection of the man beside her. His profile was stern, etched with a new, unshakable purpose. He held her hand, his grip firm and possessive, a tangible anchor in the whirlwind her life had become. He wasn't asking. He was leading, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to be led. The house wasn't a house. It was a fortress of elegance, standing behind tall iron gates. But as Raymond led her inside, his hand a steady pressure on the small of her back, it wasn't the soaring ceilings or the priceless art that struck her. It was the profound, waiting silence. It was a beautiful, empty shell, a physical representation of the hollow man who owned it. That silence was shattered the moment he brought her to the small, warmly lit room where her neighbor sat with a sleeping Alex. Seeing her son in this vast, unfamiliar place sent a fresh wave of panic through Juliet. But then Raymond moved. He knelt, his large, powerful frame seeming to fold, making himself smaller. He didn't reach for the boy, not at first. He just watched him sleep, his gaze tracing the curve of a cheek, the dark sweep of eyelashes. His expression, usually so hard and unreadable, was one of naked, staggering wonder. "Alex," he whispered, the name a sacred prayer on his lips. In that moment, any lingering fear in Juliet's heart dissolved. This was not a man who would take her son away. This was a man who had just found the most important part of himself. The following days and weeks were a period of profound transformation. Raymond was a fierce and devoted father, a natural in a role he never knew he was born to play. He spent hours on the floor with Alex, building block towers that were gleefully demolished, his deep laugh echoing through the halls, banishing the silence for good. He learned the schedule of bottles and naps with the same intense focus he applied to his business, his intimidating presence softened by the small, trusting hand that would curl around his finger. Freed from the crushing weight of survival, Juliet began to blossom. The constant worry lines on her forehead smoothed away. Color returned to her cheeks, and the light that hardship had dimmed in her eyes returned, brighter than ever. She was no longer just a struggling waitress, she was the lady of the house, her gentle warmth filling its cold, empty spaces. And in this new, safe harbor, the romance between her and Raymond deepened, evolving from a spark of rediscovered passion into a real, grown-up love. Their connection was a complex, beautiful tapestry woven with threads of fiery desire and the tender, quiet intimacy of building a family. Their evenings were no longer spent in separate worlds. After Alex was tucked into his new, spacious room, decorated with stars on the ceiling, they would sit together in the library. He would tell her about his day, the complexities of his world, and she would listen, not with fear, but with a sharp understanding that often gave him a new perspective. She was his sanctuary, the one person who saw the man, Raymond, not just the powerful boss. The passion between them, first ignited by that desperate kiss in his office, burned with a steady, intense flame. A lingering touch as they passed in the hallway, a secret, smoldering look across the dinner table, a slow dance in the moonlit living room with no music but their own heartbeats. These moments were the spicy, unspoken language of their love. It was a desire born not just of physical attraction, but of a deep, soul-deep recognition. They were two halves of a whole, finally clicked back into place. One such evening he found her standing on the balcony, looking out over the gardens. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back against his solid chest. He nuzzled her hair, breathing in her scent. "You've given me everything," he murmured, his voice husky against her ear. "You walked back into my life and turned my empty world into a home." Juliet leaned back into his embrace, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "You saved me, Raymond. In every way a person can be saved." He turned her in his arms, his dark green eyes, so like their son's, serious and full of a love so profound it made her heart ache. "No, my love. You saved me. You and Alex. You healed a heart I thought was broken beyond repair. You showed me that my forever wasn't in a boardroom or a bank vault. It was always you. It was always waiting for me in a little boy's smile." He kissed her then, not with the fiery desperation of their first kiss, but with a slow, deep promise. It was a kiss that spoke of lazy Sunday mornings, of shared laughter, of watching their son grow, of growing old together. It was a kiss that sealed their forever. The story of the broke waitress and the powerful man was over. In its place was the story of Juliet and Raymond, a family forged by fate, a second chance seized with both hands, and a love that proved that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is the simple, unbreakable bond of a family. They had found their way back to each other, proving that their one night of love was never a mistake. It was always meant to be the first chapter of their forever. We hope you were swept away by the journey of Juliet and Raymond. This story shows us that love can find us in the darkest of times and that a single moment can change our lives forever. If this story touched your heart, we have so many more tales of passion, destiny, and dramatic reunions waiting for you. Please, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a single one. Every subscription helps us bring more of these stories to life for you. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what you thought about the story. Were you on the edge of your seat when Juliet fainted? Did your heart melt when Raymond met his son for the first time? What was your favorite moment? Sharing your thoughts lets us know what you love and helps connect our amazing community of story lovers from all around the world. Thank you for watching, and we can't wait to see you in the next story.